that journey back and forth to Jerusalem periodically when it was time for them to serve in and around the temple. And so the person who was coming from Jerusalem to Jericho was probably somebody coming home. They would have understood that. And so as they were coming home, they were robbed. Probably coming home from the temple, meaning they were bringing home their wages. They were maybe a priest themselves, and they were robbed. So right off the bat, the man understood that here was a Jew, a fellow Jew. But then Jesus goes on. He talks about the people who passed him by on the other side. People who didn't want to touch him, didn't want to have anything to do with them. People who were of his own people who didn't want to have anything to do with him. But it was only the stranger, the enemy, who tended to the man. But then Jesus asked the question. Now, I want you to look at this question. If you have your Bibles, I want you to take a look at this question very importantly. He said to the man, verse 36, chapter 10 of Luke, verse 36, "What do you think? Which one of these three was a neighbor to the man who encountered thieves?" Now let's stop there, because I want you to look at very carefully what that question asks. Jesus is not saying, which of these is your neighbor? He was saying, which one acted the neighbor? That's a very different question than what the man asked, isn't it? Jesus is saying, which one acted the neighbor? Acted the neighbor. He put some action to it. He put something to it that it was not just a saying, who do I recognize as my neighbor? He's saying, who will you treat as your neighbor? He's putting the responsibility back on him, and at the same time, he's putting the responsibility back on us. Neighbor is not necessarily the who of somebody else. What Jesus is challenging us with is saying, neighbor is about you. Defining neighbor is all about you. It's all about me. It's all about what we see in our own mind's eye. It's all what we see in the people that are next to us. It's all about us. It's not about who those people are and how the same or different they are. It's all about us and our attitudes and ideas. It's all about us and our faithfulness and following this idea and ideal of God. It's all about our attitudes. It's all about our preconceived ideas. It's all about us. When we look at this idea about who is my neighbor, what we're really asking is, who should I treat as my neighbor? What kind of a neighbor am I? When I think about that, I'm challenged. I'm challenged. Because I look around the people in the community in which I live, or the communities that I have lived over the last many years, there's a lot of people that I didn't even know by first name. Not only did I not know their name, I didn't know when they came and went. I didn't know their kids. I didn't know them like I should have. Because not only did I not know them, I didn't treat them. I didn't care for them. I didn't try to do something to them to help them along the way in whatever ways in which they needed it. Several months ago, I went to a workshop, and we had a gentleman who was there who's from Colorado, and he has created a movement on neighboring. How he came to this, he was a part of a church plant, and his church grew really fast, and so he was kind of feeling there was something going on in the midst of his life, in the midst of the community in which he lived. And while he was seeing a lot of people come to church, he was seeing no difference in the community around him. He was seeing no effect on the kingdom this church was having, and he resigned. He resigned because he saw this great big church that had no effect on the community, no effect on the world. And so he and a couple other pastors got together, and they started talking about how can we make an impact on the world. It's not just about telling the story of Jesus, it's about affecting the world around us. And so these pastors got together, they started talking about things, and they finally decided they were going to go to the mayor. And so they went to the mayor of the town in which they lived in Colorado, and they said, "Mayor, tell us, what are the things that we can do as churches throughout this community to impact the world around us?" And you know what the mayor said? As he thought for a few minutes and he talked with his secretary, the mayor came back and he said, "Here's what I think. We don't need another program." He said, "But if the people in your churches would act like neighbors, we wouldn't need to add any more programs in our community, because the world would be changed by you." These pastors of some great churches, of growing churches, realized that it was their problem. It was their fault, in a sense, that they were not encouraging their people to know their neighbor, to be neighbors to the people in their own communities. And in the process of that, they were failing at kingdom building. The mayor, whether he was a Christian or not, I'm not sure about it, but what he was saying to the pastors is that if the church would just be the church. Because I think it was Jesus who said, love your neighbor. So here's my challenge to you over the next several weeks, next several months, the next several years. Be a neighbor. Be the kind of neighbor that you want other neighbors to be. Be the kind of neighbor that really takes your faith and puts it into action. Be the kind of neighbor that makes an impact upon the people who are next door. And here's the thing. I'm not asking any of us to bring somebody to church. That's not the point. The point is to develop a community where you know the people who are around you and you begin to learn them, interact with them, and impact their world. I'm going to ask the ushers if they could do me a favor real quick. I have a gift for you this morning, or our staff has a gift for you. It looks like this. It says, "Who is my neighbor?" And on here is a map. It's a simple map. And in the middle of it, it says, "You are here." And then around you, there are 6 boxes. And this map is a magnet. It's meant for you, this to go, and there should be all these back there on the table. If you could just pass them out, 1 per family, would be real helpful to me. And what I want you to do is I want you to take this home and put it prominently someplace in your house. Usually, the most prominent place in just about any house is on the refrigerator. That's where mine has been sitting for the last several months. And I've filled it in. I've gotten to know the neighbors who live across the street. I found out a couple weeks ago that Mr. Patel, who lives catty corner from me, lost his wife. I found out that my new neighbors who just moved in February right next to us, Danush and Sasha, and their dog Vanilla, moved here in 2015 from California. They're first-time home buyers. He still does not know how to use his brand new riding mower. He told me yesterday that he still reads the manual every time he gets on it. I helped him yesterday trim his bushes. He had bunches of bushes. They were way overgrown. They haven't been touched in years. Because there have been 4 different owners to the house next door. It's not the neighbors, I swear. But he was out there with these brand new clippers, clipping about a dozen bushes that he had in the front yard. So I went over yesterday and I said, "Danush, can I show you something?" And he said, "Sure." And so I brought over my electric edge trimmers and I taught him how to use them. I took him a 100-foot cable or a 100-foot cord and said, "Use it as long as you want. Bring it back when you're done." He learned how to use it, and I watched him after. I should have probably been over there helping him, but he was doing it, but only had 1 set. But he was over there just trimming his bushes. He was as happy as a clam. We get to know each other just a little bit better. Across the street are Chris and Debbie. I don't know them very well. They've got a couple of great kids, and I see their kids every day riding the bikes up and down the street. I wish I could tell you I knew all their kids' names. I don't, because they don't stop fast or long enough for me to actually find out what their names are on their bikes. There's another family that just moved a catty corner from us on the other direction. They just moved in, and I haven't had a chance to meet them yet, but I can't wait to. Lori and Greg live right next door to us. They've lived there for years, for every pastor that we've had here since we've moved into that parsonage. Not long ago, I had them it's been a couple of years now, but we had them into the house. We were talking about stuff, and they came into the house, and we sat down together, and they said, "This is the first time we've ever been in the house." This is a tool to get to know your neighbors. And over the next several weeks, we're going to talk about how not only you can get to know your neighbors, but how you can begin to love your neighbors, how you can begin to serve your neighbors, how you can begin to care for your neighbors. And the whole goal of this is not to bring those people to church. The goal of it is not at the end of this to have a big party so that maybe we can get them to come to church. The goal in this whole thing is for you to take the seriousness of the gospel to heart, to learn to love Jesus just a little bit more by loving your neighbor. This afternoon, we're going to have our first, we call it our fall picnic or our late summer church picnic. But today, instead of having our church picnic in the back, where it's easily hidden by the people who are driving by, with this hill that it didn't seem like there's a hill, but there's a hill, and from the front yard you cannot see, or from the front street you can't see our shelter in the back. So we could have 1,000 people in the back, but our neighbors wouldn't even know it because they can't see it. So today we're moving our picnic to the front yard. And we've invited the community to join us. We don't know if there's going to be 1 or 100 people from the community come along, but we've had an invitation out to all of the people who live around us. And we're calling it a block party. Because what we're doing is we're creating a circumstance, we're creating an opportunity for you to learn how to do this at home. In fact, we have a packet we're going to pass out this afternoon when you come that's a packet of how to do a block party in your own neighborhood, how to move from the backyard to the front yard, how to throw some meat on the grill and invite people to join you. Because all of this is about us taking the gospel seriously, of learning to love our neighbor, and in the process, loving God. So my challenge to you is simple. Be a neighbor. Amen.
Let's all stand as we sing "The Voice of God is Calling." The voice of God is calling, it summons in our day. Isaiah heard in Zion, and we now hear God say, "Whom shall I send to succor my people in their need? Whom shall I send to loosen the bonds of shame and grief?" I hear my people crying in slum and mine and mill. No field or mart is silent, no city street is still. I see my people falling in darkness and despair. Whom shall I send to shatter the fetters which they bear? We heed, O Lord, your summons, and answer, here are we. Send us upon your hand, let us your servants be. Our strength is dust and ashes, our years are passing hour, but you can use our weakness to magnify your power.
I'm sure that many of you, maybe most of you, are like me. And that is that we've not been the greatest of neighbors. Now, some of you, I know, have been great neighbors. Some of you already know everybody around you. You could fill in that thing right now. If you just had a marker, you could probably fill in the whole thing because you know everybody in your community. You know what's going on in their lives, and you pour out yourself to them. Good for you. But for the rest of us who fail at it at times, may today be a day of change. I know we've failed at this. I know that the world would be different if we lived by it. I know that the things going on in Charlottesville this weekend would have been impacted had the church really lived as the church. Sure, we're still going to have differences of opinion. Sure, we're still going to not see eye to eye on things theologically or racially. We're going to see things differently. But the key in all of that is not to let those things divide us. It's about letting those things draw us continually together, because what's most important in all of it is the grace of God who's poured out himself on us. So let's be neighbors today and always, through the grace of Jesus Christ our Savior. Amen.